One of the most serious problems that we have is understanding how to deal with people with whom we are in fundamental disagreement. It is such a serious problem that it has caused a division in our society that is deep and, for all intents and purposes, irreconcilable. This happened once before in our country, and it resulted in a war, a civil war, in which tens of thousands of people were killed, in which families turned against each other, in which there was a bitterness and a hostility and a brokenness that has not been healed to this day. And we are at it again. We are at it again. We don't seem to be willing to nip it in the bud. There are two sides in this issue, and they're operating by two different sets of principles, two different tactical approaches. And I think the only way I can get at this is to be perfectly blunt about it, at least from my perspective. We are dealing with an incursion, a geopolitical incursion that has occurred in many different societies, particularly in the 20th century, most conspicuously in the 20th century. The incursions were brought about by a desire for, not just for fundamental change, but for tearing down the old order. We can all think of references to this. We can think of countries where it's occurred. It certainly occurred in Russia. It occurred in Germany. It occurred more recently in Cambodia. It occurred in China, in Cuba. Occurred in nations where there was an uproar of injustice, against injustice, and an approach to it which was essentially a burn the place down approach. What happened in each of those places where that occurred was that there was no effective pushback against the destroyers. And so they won the day. They slaughtered many, they destroyed much, and left their country in ruins. So we're facing precisely the same thing here in our country today. There are increasing numbers of people who are angry, hate-filled, with a spirit of violence and destruction. What are we doing about it? What are those of us who are not in that place doing about it? We're doing a couple of things. Number one, we're ignoring it. Number two, we're tolerating it. Number three, we're seeking to justify it. And number four, we're taking up cause with it. So we've got 4 responses to it, every single one of which is wholly inappropriate. Wholly inappropriate. We can't ignore it. We must not continue to tolerate it. We sure as hell can't explain it away and somehow justify it. And we had best not take up cause with it. So the 4 things that we're doing are dead wrong. There's a 5th. It's the 5th thing that needs to be done. And that 5th thing is to go after it hard and fast. To oppose it directly and combatively. To put it down hard. To not tolerate it on any level at all. That's number 1. First of all, to absolutely not ignore it, because it is insidious and it is destructive. Number 2, to not tolerate it on any level at all. It is intolerable. It is destructive. It is of violence. It is an attitude that must be dealt with. And so we do not justify it, try to rationalize it, try to say, oh, well. No, there's no, oh, well. There's, this has to stop because it is wrong. It is destructive. It is vulgar. It is hateful. It is contemptuous, and it must be stopped. Number 4, not take cause with it, but actively and aggressively oppose it. And in opposing it, bring it to an end. We've reached a terrible state. We've reached a state in which the enemies are no longer at the door. They are seated on the thrones of power. They have become our master and are seeking to rule us, to dominate us, to control us. So, what do we do about this? Do we ignore it? Do we tolerate it? Do we rationalize it? Do we take up cause with it? No. We fight it. We fight it. We fight it in every way we know to do that. We overcome our cowardice, overcome our desire to smooth things over and just ameliorate everything and say, oh, well, we just need to get along. No, we don't need to get along. Those who are our enemies need to get along. They need to be gone. They need to be stopped. They need to be told, no, I not only do not agree with you, I will oppose you. And I will oppose you in every way I am able within the constraints of my own ethics. Do not be mistaken in this. If you are a Christian, that turning the other cheek does not mean allowing yourself to continue to be beaten up by a bully. That's not what it means. It also doesn't mean rolling over. Not what it means. Think about Jesus. What would Jesus do? I'll tell you what. He got killed for what he did. He opposed the enemies of God, the enemies of the people, so directly, so forcefully, that those in authority had to put him down. You better look at it that way, because that's the way it was. And he overcame them. But that's another story. So I just use this as a call to arms. It is time. It is time to stand up and to say no. No. You are not my authority. You have no control over me. I will not do what you demand, because I am a free person. I am not your slave or anyone's slave. And I will not be dealt with as a slave. Think you can do that? Think you better. Think if you don't, you're going to be a lost cause. And your life will be overruled by those who seek aggressively, assertively, dominantly to force you into their slave camp. Make no mistake. Make no mistake. This is real. This is happening. This is what we are confronting, what we are up against, what we are dealing with, and what we must overcome if we are to continue to exist as a nation of free men and women. Make no mistake. This is war. It may be a bloodless war, and let us pray that it is. But it is war nonetheless. So, call to arms, my friends. Call to arms. God bless you.